Hello everyone, it's your favorite Senso Tech Jedi, Lisa here, and in this video we're going to talk about how to manage your console users. These are going to be the users that are going to log into the portal and use the Senso portal to navigate and manage and monitor your devices. So let's go ahead and let's click on the gear in the top right hand corner of your Senso portal. That's going to open up the admin center for us. And in the admin center, I'm going to have you click on console users and take you to the console user area. Now there are a lot of options in the console user area, so let's start with audit logs. For audit logs, if you need to see whatever activity your users have done within the portal, that's going to be the audit log. So every time they've logged into a device or they've sent a message, or even the organizational admins, everybody is audited within the portal, so you'll be able to see those logs and search through them and filter through them and even export them as needed. You'll also find in there a delegated user audit log. Now, delegated users are going to be for users, usually support users, that you need from Senso to log into your portal. But you may be an MSP, or you service a lot of different schools and you have several different portals. With delegated users, you could add a user to that portal and they would be able to log into many different portals. You can't add a console user twice. So essentially you can't add a console user's account multiple times across many portals. A user account is specific to one portal unless they're a delegated user, meaning that they can have access to multiple portals if they are added by delegated users. So if you've ever worked with support, we will ask you to add us as a delegated user. That gives us access to your portal and we can work behind the scenes to help you with your issue. All of our logs are audited just like yours, and anybody else that's added as a delegated user would also have their logs audited. You can import users via CSV. You would need to download the CSV template and then select the CSV that you have downloaded. There's a whole separate video on how to upload your users via CSV as I walk you through the different areas of the template. So you might want to check that out for a little bit deeper dive into the download and importing the CSV. Now, manage roles. This is going to be very important, especially if you are creating an integration. Now, through our integration, you can automatically create your user accounts. So if you have a Clever, a ClassLink, or a Teams, you should be able to use those integrations to automatically import your users. But it's going to want a default role for those users. So in that scenario, you may be creating a teacher role. But with roles, you can create so many different abilities, permissions, access levels with your roles, and really get very granular across your tenancy with your users as to who can access what within Senso. So for this one, we're just going to look at the basics of the role. We're going to go through each of the steps. We're going to look at something like a teacher role, go through each of the tabs. But for you, you can use this and modify this in any way to create as many roles as you need. So the default role that comes with this will be your organizational admin. Your organizational admin is going to have access to everything. So anybody selected to be an org admin is going to be able to see all the sites, any groups, all the tools, all the login information, everything within the portal. And you may not want that. You may want to limit the permissions down, especially in a teacher role. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So once you click Add Role, here is your role area that you will be able to then name this role: staff role, teacher role, educator, safeguarding lead, DSL, principal. The list goes on with how many roles you can create within your portal. Then you have some options for what sites they can see. They can see selected sites, and then it will show you a list of all the sites available that you have created in your portal that you may want to have anyone assigned to this role have the ability to see. So that's what it's going to be for selected sites. They would be able to see everything within that site, meaning any devices that are in that site, they would be able to see those devices. User assigned sites, this will go ahead and dynamically apply the role permissions for the sites at a user level. So when you need to set up individual users in a role that they just need to have some default settings for them, but you need to go in manually to each one and you're going to select which site they have access to, that's going to be user assigned sites. Also, if you're using any of our integrations to automatically create your users, like I mentioned earlier, you would want to assign them the user assigned site ability here, because that will make them not have access to any sites, but just to the integrations that they're using. So they would only see their Google Classrooms, they would only see their Teams groups, they would only see their Clever, they would only see their ClassLink sections. So if you want to set it up for that for your teachers, you would leave this as user assigned sites. And then all sites. If you want this particular user, to be able to see every site that you've created, you would choose all sites. Now permissions. Permissions is really centered around the admin center. This is going to be everything here in the admin center that you may or may not want your users to have access to. As you can see, by default, it is turned off. Everything in here is set to disabled, but you can come in here and you can choose from the categories and pick and choose which options that you want to set up for your users. Typically for teacher users, we will leave this defaulted to off like this. But again, for those admin users and your safeguarding leads, you have options for acceptable use policy, admin area. This is going to be for adding sites, adding devices, editing devices, that sort of information. Asset, concern, DNS, device, general, group, integrations, logging, notifications, policy, user, and web content filter. You may not be licensed for some of these, so if you do not have a license bundle for things like logging or web content filter or DNS, those options would not be available for you in this list. Modules. Modules are super important for the tools that go across the main Senso console. You can limit those tools, especially if you have like an enterprise package where you've bought everything that's included, all the networking tools, all the safeguarding tools, all the classroom management tools. So in this instance, we're looking at a teacher role, and we may not want to have some of those networking or admin tools turned on for them. So you would come through here and you would say, oh yeah, I just want to give them lock screen, remote control, remote screen, maybe not command prompt. We'll skip that one, go to send message, mute sound. You see how you can pick and choose through this entire list of what modules or tools that you want to show at the top of their page. Role visibility. This is set which users can view this role. So if you have technicians that are working on site at a really large tenancy where you have a lot of moving parts and a lot of people that have different role access, and you may not want users in a particular site or assigned to a particular area to see this role to assign them, especially if it's like an admin or safeguarding role. You can pick and choose if users can view this role. And then login restrictions. You can restrict by IP address down here at the bottom, or you can restrict by days of the week and times of the day when you want this specific set of users to be able to have access to view devices in the portal. So if you set any restrictions here and say that they could only have access to it during school time, Monday through Friday, 7:45 to 4:45, then that is the only time they would have access to log into the Senso portal and be able to view the student devices. So this is very important if you want to restrict your users to when they can access those devices. And the public IP down at the bottom, you can add in multiple public IPs, but it will show you the one that it's finding first, and you can add that in a range, and that we restrict them to just the network of the school that you are at, and they can only access it if they were on that school's network. So managing users, this is where you can add users. So if we click on add user, the first thing we want to add in is their email address. And then this right here is super important, their display name. So when they send messages to users or have a live chat or send a file to them, you don't want it to just say console user. You would want it to say their first and last name or whatever they prefer to be called in the classroom. So you would want to change this to whatever their preference would be for what would show up on those dialog boxes that will go down to the students, especially when they send like a live chat. They know who it's from. You can send a verification email or you cannot send a verification email. Verification email just lets them know that their account is active, and they click on a link in that email, they'll be able to go ahead and change their password and sign into the portal. It's not necessary because we're automatically tying in to Microsoft or Google, or if you have ClassLink or Clever, that integration set up, you can single sign on at app.senso.cloud. You can go ahead and single sign on that way. So you don't necessarily have to send them a verification email. So for example, you could create all your accounts and just let your users know, hey, go to app.senso.cloud and then use the single sign on, and you'll be able to see your portal that we've created for you. The verification email, if the link is older than, if you've sent it and the link is older than 24 hours, it will time out and they won't be able to use that link anymore. You would have to send them a new verification email. And I'll show you where that area is in just a moment. Data sync, this is important if you're using Google Classroom, that you want to go ahead and leave data sync enabled. It does not hurt anything if you just want to leave data sync on, just on the off chance that at any point you change any of your integrations. It's not really going to hurt anything to leave data sync on, but if you do not utilize any integration, you can go ahead and turn off and the data sync not enabled. Roles, this is where you're going to be able to choose what role this user has. They can have multiple roles and have multiple permissions, so just be aware of that typically in a normal setup you would just assign a singular role to a user, but you could assign multiple roles if needed. Remember before we talked about the user assigned sites? This is where you would go in and give them site assignment. If they're utilizing an integration and we don't want them to have access to any sites, you would just leave everything turned off as is. Or if you have set the user assigned sites and you want to come in and say these are the sites they have access to, this is where you will toggle on that feature. Now the login restrictions here are for individual users. So of course they're going to have the login restrictions that you set in the role, but you're going to have resource teachers, after school teachers, e-sport coaches, UIL. They come in early, they stay late, Saturday school teachers. They may need a time specific for them that is outside of their role to gain access to the portal. This is how you can come in individually to those users' roles and change it up so they have different permissions than what is the default role login permissions. And then at the bottom, you would just click confirm to go ahead and create that role. All right, guys, that's how you manage your users in Senso. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.